All right, here we are. I'm going to be teaching the fundamentals of pin curls today. So we're going to try to see about just demonstrating on my doll head here. She's only been prepped by getting her head wet. I'm going to be working from the back, so the front's been parted out for later styling. And first thing I want to do is just start by discussing what a pin curl is. So this is my copy of Creative Hair Shaping and Hairstyling You Can Do. It's by Ivan of Hollywood. I know it's backwards, but you can kind of, I got it off of Etsy at one point. It's a reproduction of a book that was published in 1940 something. Hold on. I'll find it. Where was it? 1947. So I just wanted to highlight the section, and of course it's backwards here, but the section of basic curls. So two basic curls, a pin curl and the sculpture curl. Both pin curls and sculpture curls are composed of two sections. The base, the beginning of the curl, the basing indicates the direction the curl makes. So whichever way you want it to go, the base will tell you which way it's going. Whether you're going to go, this is going to get weird, clockwise or counterclockwise, although I know it's backwards here, but one direction or the other. And then the loops, the number of loops to make a curl depends on the size of the curl, the thickness of the hair, and the length of the hair, which becomes pretty obvious if you're making a very small curl and you have very long hair, you're going to get more loops around. So the first illustration here is the pin curl. This basic curl is by far the most commonly used and is the easiest to do. It is made by winding strands of hair around the finger. Each loop is outside of the last loop and the ends of the hair on the outside of the curl. So here's the illustration, and I'm just going to show you what that looks like really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and part out about an inch square here, give or take. It's not perfectly square. But basically what they're getting at here is that, I was hoping I had a spot, I'll stick it here, is once you've got your strand, you literally just wrap it around your finger so that the ends of the hair are on the outside of the curl. Now what happens with these pin curls is, one, you can get a crimp where the hair crosses over the base, and also it can be a little more difficult to encourage the ends to stay tucked in. So in doing this, I'm going to need a few pins to hold it and try and catch the end hairs, which can be a bit of an issue. So I'm going to try to bring it up close so you can see what I'm talking about here. Let's see if we can just get a little. So right in here, there's a bunch of fuzzy little hairs right there, all trying to stick out from this curl. It's a functional curl, but it may not stay as solid as you are wanting. It certainly is a faster curl than what will be the sculpture curl, which I will be reading once more from my book, and that is this illustration here, base, loops, and then the end. And reading from the book again, the sculpture curl is the finest curl known and is used by all master hairstylists. It follows the natural tendency of the hair, stays in longer, and the finished effect is more beautiful and professional looking than any other type of curl. The chief characteristics of the sculpture curl are each loop is inside of the last loop and the ends of the hair are on the inside of the curl. Step-by-step instructions showing how the sculpture curl is made will be given later in this chapter, which I have read. And then the author, Ivan of Hollywood, prefers and encourages the use of the sculpture curl, but if you choose to use the pin curl or any other type of curl, you're assured that the setting instructions in this volume will apply equally well to all kinds of curls. And then it just goes into what they're doing the illustration for a curl, showing you here's the base, comes up and loops, and here's the end of the curl, indicating that we want to do a sculpture curl. And I'm going to show you just a real quick sculpture curl, then we can go in a little deeper to each of these types of curls. So we're going to part out once more, utilizing about an inch square parting at the bottom, and coming in, making a ribbon, but this time instead of wrapping it around the outside of itself, you're going to wrap it down the finger, and then when you get to the end, you're going to telescope the entire curl down so that the hair at the end is on the inside of the curl. And then turn it and secure it. You're going to end up with a tighter curl and more secure ends. So basically, the big difference between a standard pin curl and a sculpture curl is where the ends are going. The ends of this one are on the outside, and I've had to really fight to get them to try and tuck in. The ends of the sculpture curl are on the inside of the curl, so it spirals all the way into itself. And that gives you a much stronger curl. I'm going to actually, I hate using that word, I'm going to be moving out of frame and just working from my viewpoint to show you some of the basics of how I choose to set hair sculpture curls. I'll show you some ways to do what I'm going to call the cheater curls. That's what I call pin curls, or standard pin curls is cheater curls, because you don't necessarily have as much control, but they're relatively simple to do. So I'm going to just come around and disappear out of the, see if I can tuck in and show you also the need for some ambidexterity. So I'm going to see if I can lower this down just a little bit so we can see what's going on here. So the first thing whenever you are doing any kind of wet set is to make sure that the hair is thoroughly brushed and smooth, because any catches, any knots, anything is going to end up causing your hair to crimp as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and just part out about an inch wide piece as my base section, and then come in to create a solid rectangular or square base. And I'm going to want my curl to curl from here and swing around. So from my point of view, it's going to be a clockwise direction. From your point of view, it will look counterclockwise. So the first thing is figuring out which direction it's going to go and start combing the hair smoothly in that direction. So I'm wanting it to come down and swing around. So I'm going from the corner of my section, so corner and corner, and kind of holding it at a diagonal and making sure I'm pulling it as smooth as possible. From there, I'm going to put my first finger, and this is my right hand, tuck it underneath because I'm going to want the curl to come around this way. So I want to tuck my finger underneath, and then I'm going to smoothly wrap the hair around my finger. And when I've got to the end, or nearly the end, because this hair is kind of short, I'm going to slide this hair down and telescope the curl into itself. And the ends are going to give me a little bit of trouble, and that's where a little extra push with your finger is not a bad thing. Now that I have the curl collected, I'm going to turn it until it's sitting about half on base from where I started, and then using regular hairpins, I'm going to put one in to start holding it, then putting a second in a crossed fashion so that they hook into each other and hold the curl. If with just those two pins, and I'm going to just show you in my hand, when they go in, one goes in, the other one crosses and intersects with it. So, excuse me. So if that's enough, that will lock your curl in place. If it seems that it's going to be a loose curl, you can take a third pin and tuck it in for strength and stability. Then to build the next curl, you just follow your section, take another about inch square piece, and following the same pattern of coming through at a strong diagonal, about 45 degrees, smoothing the hair, tucking my first finger up underneath, holding the hair taut towards the head, wrapping this curl around your finger, and then telescoping into itself by pushing all of the curls into themselves down your finger. Once it's gathered, come in, turn, and place the curl right where you want it, which should be in line with the previous curl. From there, we take our pin, put the pin in, take second pin, put it in, and make sure that they cross each other at a 45 or 90 degree angle, depending on where you're going with it, so that you have a curl that is solid. That gives you the building blocks so that when the entire, if I were to follow this all the way down, when the entire shaping is done, you get a swing and a curl. Now, if I were to then want to change the direction for this next row, I'm going to show what I do using my my left hand to make curls in the opposite direction. So I'm going to just part out another about inch wide parting, and although I'm going to be coming across these due to their spacing, but you still want to keep your hair as smooth as possible. Get in here nice and close. Is it gonna work? It's gonna be a pain. There we go. So what we're doing is coming down this way, and I'm gonna just circle around here so I can show you with my other hand, because I'm going to want the curl to go the other way, I'm now using my left first finger in the same fashion and wrapping around, and then sliding down my finger till the curl is pulled into itself, and then tucking it right in to where the base is, and then one pin and a second pin crossed over the first one and through the first one to hold that curl. So now you can see, using my other hand to show you one more curl going the other way. So for me, this curl is coming counterclockwise. I think in the on screen it's going the other way. And what I'm going to do is same trick, which is to go corner to corner, hold the hair taut by the scalp, put your finger underneath, this is where I want my curl to go, wrap the hair down the finger until you get to the end. Then we're going to slide the hair down and allow it to telescope and spiral. From there, we get the little end that doesn't want to behave, so we'll just force it in, and then turn and place the curl. And we utilize another 2 pins to create an X pattern. I'm going to actually show you that X pattern on a bigger sample in just a minute, but this is just to show you that depending on the direction you're wanting your curls to go, will determine generally which hand you're using to build the curl on. And it's always best, if you can, to use the hand that's closest to where you want it to go. So I'm going to just, I think I'm going to go ahead and take these down and show you a more cheat-centric version of curling. So pin curls and clips, which can make it a little bit simpler to get through, use my brains, to get through a curl set. And her hair's drying out, so I need to wet it down. That is one of the key factors in doing wet sets, is they have to be wet. So for this one, I'm going to actually take a little curl here. I hate saying actually. And I'm going to still smooth it, because I think that's important, is to turn the whole strand into a uniform ribbon. But instead of wrapping carefully down my finger, I'm just going to wrap it right around itself, and then slide it off my finger. As you can see, it's already falling apart, but I can force it into submission, and then using a single prong hair clip, come across and through and pin it down. It's a functional curl. It's not a great curl for structure, but it's good for if you need to fill in some areas that are less less seen. So if you don't need as much polish, say you just need to build wave, build a little base for it. Sorry. This is a good way to do it. So I'm going to show you from the other side. If I were to just, I smoothed it out, wrap it fully around itself. So it's right around itself. And now we have these ends sticking out. Not my favorite, but they turn it where you need it on base. Take, once more, a single prong clip, and once it's a functional curl. It's not a necessarily a pretty curl, but can be used in times of, like I said, filling, plumping areas. Also, if the hair was excessively short, I may go ahead with a clip versus a hairpin for the sake of making it stay. But the longer the hair is, the more likely it's going to dent the curl as it's sitting there. So that makes a really big difference when you're trying to create a smooth shaping on the top. It's much better to use a sculpture curl. And now we're gonna do something just a little different. Instead of a curl coming down and up, we're gonna have one that comes up and back down. So in this case, and I'm still gonna just do a cheater curl for the sake of, same idea though, corner to corner, but this one's gonna be coming up. So I've actually put my finger over the top, and it would be the same if I was doing a sculpture curl, and that I would put it on the top and then curl, follow it down, and put it where you want it. They're not the prettiest curls, but they show that depending on which way you want a curl to sit will determine how you angle the base. If you angle the base up, and always making sure that your hair is smooth. No matter what you're doing, you want to make sure your hair is smooth. So if I do another cheater curl once more, because I'm coming up, I've put my finger on the top of the strand. And I'm just going to wrap it around. It's not my favorite way to do it, because especially with this hair, the ends just fly all over the place. But with just a little bit of manual control, you can get hair to stay mostly. Sometimes I'll even, if it's really short hair, I'll actually supplement. I hate that I keep using the word. I will supplement the pin. You can see this piece of hair is sticking out. I will actually pin in here so that it can hold that end so it doesn't go flying all over the place. It's a nice way to do it. I'd like to show a little bit more, using a larger section, show how you utilize the hairpins. I'm going to show, using a large section and larger hairpins, what that can look like, how to make stay. Thus, I'm going to make a much larger parting for this curl. Doing really extremely large curls can be good for direction and filling. Doing for the base of a victory roll is a nice way to utilize a very large curl. In my case, we're doing this to show how to, on a bigger spectrum, how to use a set of hairpins to pin to. Same idea. We have a smooth ribbon. I'm going to use 2 fingers because it's a much larger curl. Wrapping it around, telescoping in, making sure the ends stay where you want them, and turning the curl so it sits where you want it. And once it is there, taking a hairpin and putting it right in and all the way down to the curl. And you'll take your second pin at a 90-degree angle, putting it in the other side and creating an X. So what you can see, they're not exactly at a 90-degree angle, but they're very close. They're crossed into each other and they're very structural. Should this curl need more support, a lot of times coming into the bottom of the curl and laying a pin from the bottom straight up to the top gives that last piece of support that a pin curl, sculpture curl needs. This can be really nice if you were doing a large bang, say, and you didn't want to have a curly base. You can use this larger curl as a way to create the curl at the ends while still keeping the base smooth. It's also just a nice way to show you on a larger scale what the pins actually look like. The pins here, the crossing helps hold the curl in place. Also with these pins, you're less likely to warp the curl and get a dent in it. If it looks like, say this one looks like it's going to warp my curl, I'll replace it. Find a slightly different placement for it to make sure that I don't end up having a dent in my curl. I'm going to show you one last type of curl that I don't use hairpins in very often at all, and that's a stand-up curl. And I'm going to do it on a wider base so we have a little more to work with. Wherever you're making it, you most often want to have your curl sitting on base. So if this is the base, when I get the curl done, I want it to sit right here to give me the height for the curl for the style that you're looking to achieve. So we take and smooth the ribbon incredibly far forward, very over directed, coming back, then to my finger in here, wrap my finger around, and then continue to use my fingers to wrap the hair down to the base. From there, as it is sitting on the base, this is where I am more likely to use a single prong or double prong clip, sliding the clip in that side, taking a second clip and sliding it in here. And this stand-up curl is what might be considered the equivalent of a roller. A lot of times when I'm styling and I want to get this effect, I will use a roller. It's a little cheaty, but it works. I'm going to do another one just to show the steps again. As I want it to stand up, I'm going to over direct as much as I possibly can while keeping the hair smooth. Gathering it up, using this is my right hand, then using my left hand to fold over, and then wrapping around itself. And this one decided it wanted to jump out. Partly why I generally prefer to use rollers, but it's a nice thing to be able to do if you don't have access to rollers and you still want the height of a roller curl. Shall I attempt to do it with the hairpins? Yes, I shall. I don't do it often as it's a bit more difficult for me to get the stand-up curl to stay where I want it. This hair is really sticky. We'll reshape using my two first fingers. Tucked around. You might have seen using my middle finger on my left hand as a support. I'm going to do hairpins. I'm going to slide one in at a very slight angle to the bottom, and then utilizing the same idea of crossing the pins, putting a second pin in the bottom to hold the curl. Not bad. I don't know that I would feel particularly safe doing crossed hairpins versus the single prong clips, but it's in there. If I were to put this under the dryer, it would dry just fine. That's another aspect that I do like about using hairpins versus clips when I'm doing pin curls or sculpture curls is the drying ability. You're going to have a much better chance of drying the hair in a reasonable amount of time should you choose to use a hairpin versus a clip. The clip is going to, I'm going to just show, if I lay a hairpin in, it's only covering that much of the hair, and it's relatively loose in between the two prongs. Where I take a single prong clip, I put it in here, it smashes it kind of flat. I have a lot more space, even though this has an air channel. It's more likely to squish the hair, misshape it, and keep moisture in the middle of the clip. That's just one of the many reasons why I prefer hairpins over prong clips. They're perfectly functional, and if you need it for yourself, that's perfectly fine. I would never tell anyone that they can't utilize what they want to use. I'm going to show, before we close out here, how to lay curls one on top of the next as you're going through a set. If they're going to come up and possibly lay on each other. And I'm using a slightly larger section. for demonstration purposes. Same situation. We're going to go at an angle and hold it tight. Put my finger in underneath and wrap around until we get to the end. Telescope down so that every loop is inside of the next. Move that and adjust the curl where I want it. Hairpin, hairpin, crossed, and that seems like it'll hold fairly decently. I might want to fight those ends later. Now for our next curl, that is going to lay a bit up on its neighbor. So I'm using my comb to smooth the curl, or the eventual curl. Finger underneath, bringing it around, and tucking it in. And this one is going to rest right up against and almost overlapping the previous one. This is something to keep in mind when you are creating a curl pattern, is where do you have to start to account for curls that might overlap. And I'll show you in a moment an illustration in the book that I started the live stream with of how you can plan your curling. Same thing, we're going to just wrap around and make a nice happy loop. Getting it off of my hand, then coming up, and laying right in on its neighbor. Although this base got a little messy, demonstration purpose only. And I'm going to do one final curl that's going to be even more planned to come up and sit on its neighbor. It's awkward. So this one, instead of coming this way like we were doing, I'm going to bring it this way so that the base starts here and it will definitely roll up on its neighbor. And this, I'm going to use my other finger. Same moves, same ideas, just the other hand. And this doesn't want to stay in, but I'm going to make it. So this, because of where we started the curl, is definitely curled up on its neighbor. And that is just something to be aware of, that you may end up with overlapping curls where they'll lay directly on each other. These ones are close, this one is really overlapped. I'm going to just show, before we close this out, the illustration, which is, lift this up. So, this one is showing you curls that are coming from the front, pulling back and rolling forward, and you start in the back corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This way, when you are doing this type of a curl where it's up and back, every consequent one can lay, if it has to, on its previous neighbor, and you don't have to fight in there. This one, it's a little different. This one has, it's a wave and then curl. So this one wants to start the curl 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there's, knowing your patterns helps be able to get your set to sit properly, and you won't have to fight previous curls to try and fit them in when you've already laid something. This is his method of doing a sculpture curl. I'm going to move my doll head out of the way for a second. So my method involved utilizing, first step, comb a ribbon. Make a ribbon, get it very smooth, and then find where it wants to wave to. This is his step. Now, the next page is the illustrations that I do differently than he does. I wrap around my finger and then telescope down to the end of my finger. His method is to come in and literally lay the curls into themselves. So rather than going around a finger, you're winding. So in this illustration, this is the end of the hair, and the inside is telescoping into the inside of this curl. Then the last part, he uses a bobby pin. I don't prefer a bobby pin, but as you can see, it's wound into itself kind of like a snail. I prefer a hairpin. This is the basis for all the curls I do. I just approach them slightly differently. And if there are any questions, anything, any concerns, any part of making sculpture curls and pin curls that you want more in-depth coverage, please ask. I will gladly answer any questions or explain anything better that I might need to. I look forward to seeing you in about 2 weeks, and we'll come up with something new and exciting to discuss as far as hair and hairstyling goes.